The Dog and Deuce Show is produced by Dymar Productions in association with Studio B Productions.
Welcome to Utah's longest running sports podcast. This is Dog and Deuce. Every week we are right here to take a deep dive into the Jazz, Utes, Cougars, Aggies, and everything in between. On this episode, the Utah Jazz are back to dominating their opponents, but could these wins be a detriment to their ultimate goal? Plus, Rudy Gobert should absolutely be in the conversation for MVP. The return of March Madness has been even more exciting than we thought. Deshaun Watson is accused of being a serial predator, and the NHL is dealing with the referee scandal. We've got all that and a whole lot more coming your way on Dog and Deuce number 361.
From Studio B in Salt Lake City, this is Dog and Deuce. Join the conversation at doganddeuce.com or send an email to doganddeuce@gmail.com.
Thank you for this episode 361 of the Dog and Deuce Show. If you want to know more, and I sure hope you do, follow along with the show notes at doganddeuce.com.
You can watch this show all weekend long on Cape Hatter TV or Backcountry TV, or you can listen wherever you get your favorite podcasts. We would love to hear from you. Send us an email to doganddeuce@gmail.com. I am Dog.
And I'm Deuce.
And this is episode 361. If you are watching us over on YouTube, do us a favor, subscribe. Click that little bell so you get notified every time we upload a new episode, and leave a comment, leave a like, all that YouTube stuff that I've been told is very important into growing a YouTube channel. We are eagerly awaiting the trade deadline. We are at 0 hour right now. Not technically, but pretty close. A couple hours away as we record this from the trade deadline. Who knows if the Utah Jazz will do anything. Looks like Aaron Gordon is going to be heading to the Denver Nuggets, which is not great news if you're a Jazz fan. But the good news, if you are a Jazz fan, is that they're back to winning. Now, James, last week, we did our little predictions. We forecast the upcoming week's games. You had the Jazz going 2-2. Is that right?
I did.
I had them going 3-1. Now, technically, I was right, but I don't know if I really want to count it because that Nets game was basically the Jazz against a G League team and doesn't really count. But neither of us really saw them dropping it to the Wizards.
No, we didn't see the Wizards, but I want to point out you got to be pretty nervous come Friday, March 19th, when those Tampa Bay Raptors were giving us the business. I was thinking of you. In my heart of hearts, I was like, oh, man, come on, Raptors. Like, as much as I want the Jazz to win, I just want to be able, after the hard time Dog gave me for saying they're better than their record indicates, I just want to be able to say, booyah. And unfortunately, I can't. But I wanted to know you were on my mind. Well, Friday night.
I was thinking, that's weird. Yeah, that is weird. I was thinking about it too. And I was nervous. I was definitely nervous. I mean, let's face it. March Madness is not going well for me. This is embarrassing. Let me just take a quick detour real quick if I can. Our bracket, our Dog and Deuce bracket is, it's embarrassing because one of the two people hosting this bracket is tied for last place and is like getting just slammed. My only solace is that my brother is actually tied with me for last place, and his is looking pretty bad right now. So that's my only solace, is that sibling rivalry leads me to take a little bit of pride in that I'm at least not worse than my brother yet.
Well, and you can't be, because you still have a max score. Like, I think even if you lost, if Baylor lost, I think you would still, don't quote me, I think you got B minus some which I know means a lot to you. So B, if you're listening, like when we're discussing picks, like all he really cares about is beating you.
That's true. I
think he probably knows that. Although at this point, reiterate,
I kind of want the toilet trophy. That's what the last place trophy is. It's a toilet. And I just want to get something from this, you know? So, but it really is. I really believe that last place trophies are bad luck. So I don't really want it. I just kind of want to get something out of it. But you are in second place right now, tied for second. thank God you showed up to this thing, because if both of us were doing bad in our own bracket that we're hosting, that's pathetic. But we want to give a huge congratulations. And it's not over yet. It's not over, but Logan, who is also known as Dragon Squatch on Twitter, is in first place. It doesn't make me feel very good because he has publicly said that this bracket took him about 2 minutes to put together. He didn't know anything about it, and he just kind of threw it together. But that is the kind of March Madness we're having. That's the kind of tournament we're having right now. So congratulations to him. If he wins, we'll get him on the show. He's a fellow podcaster, so we'll plug the show. We'll get his the secret to his success. But Logan Cox, man, dude, I mean, he really is. He's only one ahead of Brainless Steve, but for the max, I mean, I think he's got it, dude. He's as close to wrapping this thing up as you can get, I think, right now. Yeah, it appears. Let me check his bracket. Let's see. Yeah, he's got it. I mean, so Logan Cox, man, when it's official, unless, he's got it. I think he stole my bracket, but that's okay. It's no big deal. I'm gonna forget about it. I gotta say, the Aztecs let me down. Here, I have something to read in the idea of March Madness in that sort of vein, and I guess pain. So this is from KDG, Holiday, Utah, big Michigan State fan, and this was the night of the BYU game. So you can imagine, coming down the stretch, I'm on the text thing, and I'm like, "How we doing?" And she goes, "That's a big fat mother beep." If you get what I'm saying. And I said, yeah, well, that'll be on the show. She's like, for sure. She said they needed a closer. Henry's last shot in regulation was pitiful. We needed Mr. Big Shot, Denzel Washington on the floor, or Cash Money Winston. Painful. Use that for your podcast, buddy. So that was, as you can tell, it was upset. A little hostility going on because Sparty. And then BYU let me down. I'm never picking BYU again. Why would you? Overtime game for UCLA to destroy you like that, I'm sorry. Never picking BYU again. Not even if Jim are reincarnated. I guess we're just kind of jumping into the March Madness right now. We're definitely going to get back to the Jazz talk in a second, so stay with us. But that's what we're learning in this tournament. And you tell me if I'm right. It's easy to sit there and say the Pac-12 is much better than we thought. Because as fans of Pac-12, of a Pac-12 team, sometimes it's frustrating. And you look at it, and it's the same thing in football, too. Although football, they don't really produce in the postseason, which really is frustrating. But in basketball, the Pac-12 is, I mean, they're on fire. I think Colorado, was it Colorado that lost? They're the only one who've lost so far. And what's that? You're right, yep. Yeah, and the Pac-12 is looking good. So maybe it's more parity and less subpar basketball than we thought. But that also leads me to think, like, well, what does that say about what the Utes were? Because the Utes beat USC, and the Utes have beat these teams, and we ran Larry Kryskowiak out of town. So, maybe he was doing a better job than we thought. I think it was time for him to go. I'm not at all defending or defending Larry's, job and that he should have kept it. I think it was time for him to go, but maybe he was doing a better job than we gave him credit for. Yeah, I mean, here, and you're right. Look, and let's not forget, just like 15 days ago, the Utes took SC to double overtime with half the team fouled out, right? And it's funny, when I think it was probably the second or third day of the tournament, I tweeted it out, and we got a response from Brian Priest over at Home Court Podcast. I said, is the Pac-12 success at least giving you pause on that maybe it wasn't time to let Larry K go? And Brian Priest responded, not at all. K's message had worn out. Great recruits weren't coming in, and the good ones weren't developing enough. Utah may not be a sleeping giant, but they've got the ability to catch lightning in a bottle every few years with the right coaching, recruiting, and attitude. Agreed. And I agree with that point, but I mean, we'll see. Look, and you asked when we talked about Larry K, and this is sort of going off kilter here, but I'm going to be very interested to see anyone who's been there for 10 years. And again, 180 and 30 is pretty good considering where the Utes were playing, the conference they were playing in. And obviously the Pac-12 was a little stronger. The Big Ten, let me tell you this, Big Ten, they must have, whether it's the regular season and or the conference tournament,
they have eaten themselves alive because none of those teams, I mean, Ohio State, I don't normally ever root for the Buckeyes, but I'm definitely not now. Losing to Oral Roberts, which, I mean, elicits a whole lot of other different thoughts if you're an idiot like me, which I'm assuming most people who listen to are, or smarter than, maybe not. But I mean, losing in the first round, pulling a Virginia, only a little better than a 1-16. I mean, come on.
It's bad, dude. It's bad. I'm trying to think. Usually we'll have one or two Cinderella teams who make it to the Sweet 16. It's ridiculous how many we have. I can't even count them. I don't ever remember a tournament providing this much excitement in regards to anybody can beat anybody. And that's the kind of year we're in, man. That's the kind of year. I am going to say this, though. After an entire weekend of watching college basketball, I mean, it was on in my house, whether someone was in front of the TV or not, it was on in my house from morning till night. That's all that was on. My daughter was so pissed. She hated every second of it. But after watching so much college basketball, it was a breath of fresh air to watch a Jazz game, because NBA basketball, even at its absolute worst, is 138 times more palatable than a college basketball game. College basketball, and I know everyone does this, and I go on this rant every single year, but it is a disorganized mess. The spacing is bad. The passing is bad. The shooting is bad. The dribbling is bad. The defense looks more impressive, but that's just because the offense is so inept. It's so hard to watch. That said, it's been a fun tournament, and I've had more fun, even though I'm doing worse than I've ever done at picking college basketball in the tournament. I'm having more fun than I've ever had watching it.
I'll second that motion and send it to a vote. You're right. I mean, and look, this is really a product of the one and dones, right? I mean, because there's no, and especially, and it's really, really, really glaring its head this year, where, you've had protocols, practice protocols, COVID pauses, yada, 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 whatever it is. The one and dones or the sophomores, those teams are struggling. I mean, Oregon State beat Cade Cunningham in Oklahoma State, and I would take 9 out of 10. I'm taking Oklahoma State.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
Loyola Chicago's back on the scene. Sister Jean is back. Thank God for Sister Jean making it through the pandemic. And that's a upperclassman team. They've got the chemistry built over 4 years. The pauses, the stops, the difficulties that, the pandemic presented affect them less. They still affect them, but less. I mean, if you look at the teams that are succeeding, they have a lot of top end or upperclassmen leadership, and the teams that aren't, don't. So, and they're out early, which is weird though, because you'd think Iowa would be good in that case, and they're not. I don't know. It's a weird tournament, but like you said, despite my likelihood of winning any bracket I'm in, which is I think 0 at this point, I'm having a lot of fun because the return it's been long coming and long overdue.
Well, I'm in 3 brackets. I made the mistake of putting the bracket I used for our bracket challenge into another little Twitter bracket that was kind of thrown together, and I kind of just decided last minute to jump on. And that was a mistake because I'm in dead last place in that one. That's embarrassing, dude. Like, because, they're tweeting out like the wall of shame, or, the shaming post at the bottom 3. And of course I've got, no one's even close, man. No one's even close. Like, I'm just the worst. So it's embarrassing, but man, this is fun. I'm still having fun.
Do you remember though, last week when we picked ours, I'm so grateful that I stayed up late and rethought it, because I had Alabama, Ohio State winning.
That's
and I
right.
said, I can't do this. This is a football. Right. This is a football. This is basketball. It's not football. And I dodged a bullet, man. It took me some time. I was like, maybe just go for it. Just be different. Be smart. Yeah. Well.
Dude, I'm not going to lie. When I opened up our bracket, when they all went live, and I saw that I think like 8 or 9 people had taken Gonzaga to win it all, I was like, oh, baby. Here we go. I got this in the bag. And are you kidding me? Now who's the idiot? I told you last week, I was either a super genius, which is not at all likely, or I turned in one of the worst brackets in NCAA tournament history. And
well, you still might be right. Baylor still got a shot. Don't kid yourself.
I know Baylor. I like Baylor. I think that they can do it. We'll see though. Who knows, man? With all these upsets, I don't feel very comfortable with it. But we still have more Utah Jazz talk. But while we're on the topic of college basketball, our good friend Nate the Hemorrhoid, and if you are new to the show, Nate is a great friend of the show, great friend of ours. You have dubbed him Nate the Hemorrhoid. And I'm a little, you know what? I'm a little frustrated because it feels like you two now, like you two used to have a little bit of animosity going on, when he started calling into the show. Now I feel like you two have kind of gained up a little bit. And now I feel like the animosity is pointed directly towards me. And so now I think I've always been a champion of the nickname Nate the Hemorrhoid, but now I'm really, really championing that nickname. But the thing that sucks is he's embraced it. So you can't, like, when he's embraced it, you can't, there's nothing you can do about it. It sucks.
He's a wise man. He knew it. That was like the first test. If you're going to call in, you're going to give me grief, you're going to get a nickname and it's scratchy and itchy and doesn't smell too good. Do you embrace it or do you roll with it or do you rebuke it? If you rebuke it, then we're going to have a heyday. He made the wise decision to embrace. And now we're going to have to think of a new nickname probably.
I'm working on it, man, because I am like, he wanted to talk a little trash because, of course, Nate's in our bracket. And let me look where he's at right now. He is in fourth place. So he's not doing too bad, but he has been he bobbed in and out of first place for a while.
He did.
But now he's in fourth place. He's dropped down. The fall from the top is always the hardest. So, but let's give him his day. Let's let him talk a little trash. Here's Nate the Hemorrhoid calling in on our Dog and Deuce voicemail and text line. And if you want to give us a call or a text, go ahead and do that. 801-477-7678. That's 801-47-SPORT. Here's Nate.
Brothers and sisters, I bear witness that Dog does not have the revelation and does not know anything about the March Madness.
True.
It is
true.
written that he brings shame to all of college basketball after being at the bottom since the beginning of time.
And you know what? He's right about that. I have been in last place or close to it from tip-off. This sucks, man. I hate college basketball. I don't like it. I take back everything I said. This is awful.
No one would do worse than he, and we have written evidence of it. We all have borne witness that the Jazz had a little bit of a tough slump the last 10 games. But I profess to thee that they are in good hands and will be West Conference leaders come mid-May.
Wait, hold on. Is he predicting that they're going to be in the finals? Is that what that is?
I think number 1 seed is what I'm hearing.
Is that okay? That's what you're hearing. Okay.
Ute Nation, we have been blessed with the removal of Coach K from his position of tyranny. However, seeing the Pac-12 dominate during the madness of March, this might prove that the Utes were on the cusp of something great with him. Maybe the conference is tougher than we all think, and we might see them dark days ahead of us. Now, only time will tell until that happens.
Okay, so I know Nate is just fine with Larry K going.
Yeah.
So it is interesting to hear him kind of not backtrack. That's not the right word. What is the right word? But to say, maybe he did have something going there.
BYU, well, you made it into the tournament only to lose to a play-in team from the conference that you think is an embarrassment to the NCAA and is lesser than thee. But you did not perform with great heart, and you lost, just like always.
Just like always. Oh, that's good. I mean, he's not wrong.
No.
He's not wrong.
Now, these things I do say humbly in the name of Holy Hemorrhoid. Amen.
Wow, man. I think he missed his calling as a preacher.
Seriously. I got to say, you can fact check that. He's not wrong. Fact check that. He's right on pretty much everything he said, I think. I do have to say, so I was actually thinking about this again the other night. I have met the Hemorrhoid once, and it reminds me of the scene. Do you remember the time I met him?
Yeah, I do.
Yes, we were coming out of recording, and he was driving crazily toward us in a snowstorm. And it reminded me of the scene in Back to the Future where he comes back to the parking lot and the like terrorists or whatever are driving, like shooting him. That is what I was thinking about. I'm like, how could I accurately describe the fear in my heart in that moment? Because it's like 1 a.m. We're cruising out. Both of us are like, whoa, who's driving at us at an alarmingly high rate of speed in a snowstorm? And sure enough, he whips in and he's like, hey, just want to say hi. Have a great night. Bye.
I think
and just drives. So that it reminds me of that Michael J. Fox moment in Back to the Future where he returns and he's like, oh my God, they're back again. Anyway.
I think he was laying on the horn too, wasn't he?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It was like 1 a.m.
Legit reason to be fair.
We're walking.
Because you were fearful. I was like,
oh yeah. I was like, who is this lunatic? What is going on here? And we were walking out of the office where we had the old studio in the parking lot. And here he comes, man, blaring the horn. And I remember you said afterward, you're like, I thought we were going to have to fight someone. I was like, I did too, man. I thought it was going to be bad. Yeah, that's our boy, Nate the Hemorrhoid. As always, we love it when he calls up. And good stuff, man. That's
Game
a
is
gold
strong.
star.
Game is strong.
That was good.
He's really riding that bracket, domination to next levels.
It's true. I can't wait till we get our football challenge going because that's where I shine.
That's your shining moment.
It is, man. It is. Again, if you want to hit up our voicemail or text line, feel free to do so. We would love to hear anything you got to say. It doesn't even have to be about March Madness or the Jazz. It could be whatever you want. 801-477-7678. That's 801-47-SPORT. Tell us what's on your mind. Let's see here. This is Dog and Deuce. We are on K-Patter TV. If you are in Southern Utah, you can watch us on Backcountry TV. We're on both those channels all weekend long and all week long. It's replayed. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/DD on sports. And of course, our bread and butter, wherever you get your podcast, you can download and listen to this show. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere. Just look us up, man. You cannot miss us. Okay, Jazz basketball. Let's finally get back into Jazz basketball after that was quite the digression there. Utah Jazz, you were 2-2 last week. You said 2-2 last week for them. I said 3-1. Technically, I was right, although it doesn't feel right because the Nets decided to sit everyone. But this is both, I think, a detriment and a luxury that the good teams get, because when you catch a team at just the perfect moment, like the Nets, who are coming off a back-to-back, they have 2 of their stars hurt. James Harden is playing an absurdly amount of minutes right now. Blake Griffin is he's just not himself, what he used to be. The Nets were in a situation where, we could play Harden, we could play Griffin, but we're probably going to lose anyway. Or at the very least, it'll be a very tough game, and could be some. We need to preserve those tires as long as we possibly can. Or we can just kind of throw in the towel and rest everybody. And that's what they chose to do. And I think the good teams kind of get that luxury at times. If you're the Lakers, if you're the Golden State Warriors back in the day, if you're the San Antonio Spurs back in the day, that's no big deal if you're playing a team who chooses to do that, because you have the experience and the talent and the leadership to know that you can turn it on. You played enough tough games in the playoffs, in the postseason, to know that you don't need to be to practice against these good teams in order to make a deep run. The Jazz don't have that. The Jazz have they have not underperformed in the playoffs, but they haven't made deep runs. They need all of the reps they can get against the NBA's best in order to know that we can overcome a tough team, we can overcome a deficit, we can overcome a close game, and we can actually get the win. They need that. We've seen their confidence coming back the last couple games, but I would have loved to see them play Brooklyn, even if they lost, just to be able to get those reps against those teams.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, what a luxury. Like, anytime Kyrie, Harden, and Durant have been on the floor, it hasn't even been much of a game. I saw 2 weeks ago on ESPN, they played a tough game where all 3 of them played, I think. But by the mid fourth quarter, it was over. It was tough for 3.5 quarters, and then it wasn't. And they have the luxury of one. First of all, that that Durant and Harden played together in Oklahoma City. So there's already a familiarity level that is pretty legit. I mean, they made an NBA Finals together, right? And Kyrie can kind of fit in where he is. What is the deal with Kyrie where he can just leave for like 4 or 5 days randomly? You don't know why. I mean, more power to him. I wish my job had that kind of availability, but it truly feels like Steve Nash, Mike D'Antoni, and all, Blake Griffin, Durant, Harden, and Kyrie feel very comfortable with where they are and that they could come to at a moment's notice and be the best team on the floor. The Lakers now, had the unforeseeable, or not maybe unforeseeable, but the unfortunate situation occur with LeBron James. He's out for at least 6 weeks. We've been in the West our whole lives because we're Jazz fans. Tough conference. They could be dropping down into the playoff game. Without AD returning very quickly, they're not rushing him back either. Who knows? I'll tell you what, it's time for Kyle Kuzma to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
If he wants to make a lot of money, the time is now, fellow Ute. The time is now.
Earn that paycheck.
Yeah. So there are really interesting developments. And you're right. After a loss to the Wizards, a close game to the Raptors, blowing out of the Bulls, and then the blowout of the Nets, as a Jazz fan, and this is weird because we complained about 15 days ago or whatever it was when the Jazz were seeing tough competition and losing, although I think it was moments of growth in those losses that they need as the season progresses and heads into the playoffs, but we're not seeing it right now. And given, the Grizzlies, Cavaliers, we play the Grizzlies 3 out of the next 4 games. That's wild.
What a weird year.
Wild, I get a back-to-back, but 3 out of 4, it's like we're playing baseball schedules here. And then the Cavaliers and the Bulls again, their win streak should probably be up to, 7 or 8, given what the Magic have done in the trade deadline today with Vucevic being gone, among others. Their win total should be, 9 probably. Really, realistically, they'll be favored in the next 6 games, and 9 wins in a row, while not a given ever because it's the NBA, seems very realistic.
I would agree. Here's the thing. It's just so hard to beat a team when you play them so often. And the Jazz are going to be playing the Grizzlies 3 out of the next 4, like you said. It's just going to be really hard to sweep them in those 3 games. And it's
Bizarre.
not, and the Grizzlies aren't bad. They're not good, but they're not bad. They just happen to be playing in a Western Conference, which is really tough for them. Right now they're still in the playoff picture, very much in the playoff picture. So to me, that's not an easy team, to get 3 against.
And they're on a 3-game winning streak with wins coming over Warriors, Celtics, and the Thunder. So that's no joke. And like you say, they are in the playoffs. They're in the 9th spot right now. What, a game behind the Spurs on the 3-game winning streak. No, but the Jazz should be able to handle them at least 2 out of the 3,
Right. If they don't get 2 out of the 3 against them, I'm worried. We'll just put it that way.
These games become important because like we're saying, from top to bottom, the Jazz have a 3-game lead, I guess, over the Suns right now. But from top to bottom to the 8th seed, there's only 10 games that separate them. A 4-game winning streak and a 6-game, or a 4-game losing streak for the Jazz and a 6-game winning streak for the Blazers. And there's a flip-flop. People are moving up and down and vice versa. So as much as 10 games seems like a lot, it's really not from 1 to 8 or even 9 when you think about it.
Especially in the Western Conference, because things can swing so quickly. Just the rise of the Phoenix Suns has been incredible. I know the Lakers are suffering injuries right now, but the Clippers are not. The Clippers have won 3 in a row, and the Suns were able to overtake them. So things happen fast in the Western Conference. Thankfully, the Jazz have a favorable schedule in terms of teams' record that they're playing against, but they're going to be playing a lot of road games because they played a lot of home games. It felt like to me at the front of the season. Maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like they should be on the road quite a bit. We'll see what happens. Let's just real quick. Let's run through these next 4 games. Again, 3 of those are against the Grizzlies, and the other one's against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Where you got the Jazz finishing in the next 4?
I'll go 3-1. And I'm going 3-1 because, like you said, it's really hard to beat a team 3 times in a row that you're seeing on 6-day stretch or something like that. Yeah, 6-day stretch. It's really hard, really difficult. Yeah. And 2 of those, will be close to back. We got to start with back-to-backs tomorrow and then Saturday. So I'm guessing the Jazz drop one of those 2, 3-1. The only loss either tomorrow or Saturday to the Grizzlies.
I'm right there with you, man. 3-1 for me. And then next week it'll get interesting because then they'll have the Magic, Mavs, Suns, and Blazers. So that'll be a tough week. Will tell us a lot about where the Jazz are at. I do want to say something quickly about Rudy Gobert. And we talked last week about how important he is to this team and how valuable he is in general. And when it comes to the term most valuable player, MVP, I don't know how he's not on a very short list. I'm not saying he's the best player in the league, and I think that's what it comes down to for people who vote. It's not who's the most valuable player to their team. I think it comes down to who is the best player, and I understand that. But when it comes to most valuable player, I got LeBron James, and then I got Rudy Gobert. And I understand it's not sexy. I understand that fans of other teams can't stand that, and they don't like Jazz fans because we keep saying this type of thing. But if you watch the Jazz, when Rudy Gobert is on the floor versus when he's not on the floor, you cannot deny how freaking important he is to this team. It is like a totally different squad. And it affects the defense, obviously, but it also affects the offense. And sometimes I'm watching them, and if we didn't have Jordan Clarkson, who's had a couple rough games, but overall, if we didn't have Jordan Clarkson, I'm not sure there'd be many buckets at all from the bench. So it kind of pains me, and I get other fans of other teams don't like watching Rudy Gobert because he's not real flashy, he's not real exciting. But anyone who denies how important he is doesn't watch Jazz basketball. And that's all there is to it. I saw Stephen A. Smith has Donovan Mitchell on his short list for MVP candidates. And I love Donovan. I love that. And I agree. If you don't watch a lot of Jazz basketball, I can see why you would throw him on there. But I just think Rudy Gobert is absolutely, he's so vital. And it just cannot be overstated how valuable and important he is to this team. And as long as I have even a small platform, I'm going to be ringing the Rudy Gobert bell and pounding that drum until the day I die, because he is absolutely insane. And we are so lucky to have him. And I hope Jazz fans don't take it for granted.
I mean, you're right. And they should change the MVP award to the best player in the league award.
They should.
Right?
Yeah, right.
Because you're right. That's what it is. The player who is the best and typically on one of the best teams. So Rudy is really sort of challenging the idea of what it means to be an MVP. And a little bit of that is a byproduct of how we talk about him, right? And I know I'm not making fun of anyone here, but we talk a lot about screen assists and yada, yada, those type of game terminologies, which mean a hell of a lot to Utah Jazz fans, but mean very little outside the confines of the state of Utah.
And I get it.
An average or casual basketball fan.
Right. I understand it. It's not fun. Like, screen assists aren't fun, I get it.
But here's the one that you can, and I look, I'm not looking it up. So if there's a stats nerd out there who wants to contradict this, just do a plus minus Rudy on the floor and off. And I guarantee you he's in the top 3 in the league. And then I'm thinking LeBron's one of them, probably Kawhi. Who else? And among others, Dame Lillard's probably one that would rival him as far as a plus minus when he's on the floor and off the floor and his team's production. And Rudy Gobert is going to be right there. So that it means his value is immense and great. And look, if Rudy Gobert is not on the Jazz, I would hesitate to even, it would be such a catwalk. 32 wins and 11 losses right now. I mean, what are they? 22 and 22, essentially, probably, or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, like I think he has added, and this is just me watching games, at least 10 wins based on his production level.
At least. For sure. I mean, it's crazy to me. And again, I can kind of forgive the fans of other teams, and they hate the Jazz. They hate the Jazz fans. I get it. We're kind of at the losers table. Whatever. Who cares? Get over it. I've been a Jazz fan my whole life. This is nothing new. Let's stop worrying so much about that. But when you have national guys who only cover the NBA, and they don't understand the value that he brings. Like, I get it if you're like a media guy in Orlando or a media guy like in Milwaukee or something. But if that's your job to cover the entire NBA and you're undervaluing Rudy Gobert, or you're kind of laughing at the idea that he could be in the conversation for MVP, again, I don't think he's going to win it. I don't think he should win it because it's not that type of award. But if you're that guy, you're just not doing your job. You're just not paying attention. And that's the thing that kind of irks me is like, this dude he's just been so undervalued his entire life when it comes to basketball that it's helped us, obviously. But it's time for people to start taking notice of what he's doing. Pardon the pun.
And I hope not. Because that'll just stoke the fire more. Like, in my most selfish way, here's the thing about altruism. Like, yeah, I want him to get it, but not really, because him not getting any pub only benefits the Utah Jazz and consequently makes my game nights a little better or a lot better.
Very good point.
But you're absolutely right. Look, I think it's just like the Jazz early in the season. I think people are coming to appreciate more of the impact he has on the game. And the one thing that most of our players play hard 85% of the time. But I can say one thing definitively. There's never been a game where I've been like, Rudy just didn't play tonight. Didn't play well,
right? Just
didn't play. Like, and I was asking for him to hit a water bottle a couple weeks ago. He's matured and wants to keep his money. I totally understand that. But man, the guy comes to play, and he runs the court more than some of our small forwards.
It's crazy. And he really does.
8 inches taller, so
it's insane.
That's the thing. Not to mention his screen assist, his defensive presence, his offensive acumen's coming around. Had a little turnaround jump shot the other night. How about it, buddy? Yeah.
He did.
And then I saw a dribble in between the legs last night. Legit.
He's really trying to get that offensive game going, and I think it'll come together. And this is the last thing I'll say, and then we can move on. He didn't play particularly well against the Raptors. And do you know how I remember that? Do you know why I remember that? Because he actually had a subpar game. He never has a subpar game. He almost had a triple-double with blocks. He was 1 block away from having a triple-double. That's insane. How can you not just be blown away by what he does every single day?
I mean, it's funny that you say that. In the Raptors game, he had 16 rebounds and 15 points.
Okay, maybe it's a different game then, but maybe it was the Wizards game. Maybe that's why we lost.
Yeah, well, everyone played terrible in the Wizards game. That was a group team effort of not giving a crap. And
yeah, but when we've seen that in the past, it's always been Rudy is the one guy who does play well.
And Bradley Beal and Westbrook just saying nope.
Yeah.
I mean, those and Westbrook's always going to go out the Jazz.
Yeah.
Forever. He could be playing in Europe, and if you strapped a Jazz uniform on the opponent, he would destroy them.
Totally.
Because that's just that forever, right?
Totally.
And we all know why. We don't need to revisit that. But yeah, I think you're thinking of the Wizards game, and that was just a team letdown. The fact that there was 122 and it's a 9-point game, I never felt that they had a chance to win that game. Ever.
No, the Wizards game.
Yeah,
it felt like the Golden State game.
Exactly. Like they were just going through the motions,
right?
And that's when I start to get worried, right? Like with the Jazz, we've hit on it before. You gotta bring it, right? We need the 1 seed, especially with the vaccine coming through and people being. Who knows what the capacity will be? LA probably still won't be able to have fans, but guess what? If they have to come here, we can have fans, right or wrong. Right. We can.
This is the time to do it. If you're going to win a title, this is the time to do it.
It might provide a little bit of a hitch in their giddy up. Time will tell. Look, the Jazz are back to winning. It's March Madness. Life's going all right.
Life's good. Life is good. Let's talk about some not so good things to close out the show. Let's talk about Deshaun Watson first.
Okay.
And the accusations, I mean, they are just coming from all directions at this point. And the consensus seems to be that he is a serial predator. I don't know.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Those are the allegations. I don't know what more to say other than this is awful. And these poor victims, if it's true, it's terrible. And I am sick and tired of having to deal with these type of stories and having to cover these types of stories because it's not, I just want to talk about sports, but it just seems like without fail, every time we start to get into a lot of fun topics, bad people can't help but be bad. And this kind of stuff happens. So, and again, it's alleged, but it seems to me there are so many allegations that it's very hard to defend him at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I will say one thing. These are all, from my understanding, civil cases, right? So there has been no criminal charges levied that I'm aware of yet. And this is, Thursday, March 25th. So in that capacity, I will say, he hasn't been charged criminally. So while there may be a civil complaint, it appears at least yet, and I haven't read any of the complaints, but I've followed the story. I don't think he's been accused of rape. It seems to be that he's accused of being extremely improper to the point where it's sexually offensive and maybe misusing his position of trust. And, I will say, it's shocking because all the stories I've read of Deshaun Watson, all the clips I've seen, and of course that's media, right? Have been extremely positive. I mean, I'll go back. I don't know if you remember, there was a time, and it was pre-pandemic, but something was going on with the Houston Texans, like kitchen or janitorial staff, something like that. And one of them, or a few of them even, I can't remember, were having some financial difficulties where they were working, a grip of hours and still couldn't pay for whatever it was that was occurring in their life. And he jumped in and paid for it all, and didn't want the limelight, and sort of it was secretly videotaped and then became a story. But look, it's just another example of athletes misusing their power or thinking their power trumps all, allegedly.
Right.
Now, he could turn out and all these could be fictitious, made up money grabs, but 16 is a lot. I mean, that is a lot.
That's a lot.
Right? Like if you're like this lawyer, if this lawyer's just like scheming to try to take Deshaun Watson's money, 4 or 5 will suffice. You don't need 16. You know what I mean? And so, like you say, when the number gets so high, it's hard not to believe that there is some truth to what they say, on its face. And, many would argue, well, if one alleges it, we should believe them. I'm always in the more of like, let's let investigations go out and then I'll decide when I have the full case, like we did with Dennis Lindsey, like I'm tending to do with Andrew Cuomo. Let's let the investigation take place and then I'll make my judgment. But 16 people is a lot. It's not a one passing in the night with a misunderstanding by a massage therapist. It is 15 other women who allege she did something very similar. It's unfortunate, and it's quite a fall from grace. One of the hottest players on the trade market has been Deshaun Watson. I imagine if you're speaking from a purely football perspective, that's completely diminished, right? And from just a human perspective, it's heartbreaking for the ladies, and it's the reoccurring theme that these people that we tend to idolize, and for whatever reason, because they can throw a ball, aren't the ones we need to be idolizing.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's becoming just all too common for this kind of stuff to happen. It's terrible, and man, I guess I shouldn't hold out hope that humanity is going to stop being bad altogether, because that's there are how many 7 billion people in the world. It's pretty hard to tamper out evil, but it's just awful that this stuff keeps happening. But it is important that this stuff is brought to light when it does happen. As much as I hate discussing it, we need to shed light on it in order to stop it, in order to curb it.
It will be sort of interesting, though, just from and I'm not a lawyer, but from a legal perspective, if he's not drawing, and I don't know the statute of limitations on when this occurred, right? The dates as far as the years, and if the statute of limitation for a criminal charge has, been extinguished, pardon me. But it will be interesting to see if any criminal charges do come out of these civil lawsuits, because they're all civil and they're all asking for money. So I'll be interested to see if the district attorney in Houston or wherever the events occurred brings some kind of charges. That'll sort of be the real unbecoming, if you will, of Deshaun Watson. He's got a lot of money, right?
Yes.
And you can think that he's a bad person, but these are all civil, and he could still play football, but criminal charges become a whole new can of worms.
I agree. I do want to give one correction. Last week we were talking about Dennis Lindsey, and I had mistakenly said that the NBA had exonerated him, I think is the word I used, or something along those lines. That is not the case. They just found no wrongdoing. So they didn't come out and definitively say that he is innocent. They just said they could find no evidence of any wrongdoing. So I think that's an important distinction, and I want to correct myself, because that is a much different outcome than what we got. So now let's talk about a good old-fashioned referee scandal.
Yeah, buddy.
This time
now we're back to what we love.
This is it, man. This is our stuff. We started out our career by interviewing Brian Toohey, the most notorious sports conspiracy theorist that I can think of. He wrote the book, The Fix Is In. It's a fantastic read. Whether you buy into it or not, it's a fantastic read. And I think we did like an hour and a half interview with him 10 years ago. And so I've always kind of had an interest in this kind of stuff when it popped up. And this story is kind of fun. I'll let you take the lead on this one, because I don't know the exact details, but I thought this is an interesting story.
So Tim Pill, NHL referee, right, of many years. He's 53. This was his last season. Got caught on an open mic in the Nashville Predators versus, I think, Detroit Red Wings, saying he's talking, and it's a 4-second clip. So you don't hear any time before or any time after, saying, I got to get Nashville a penalty, essentially. Like, I'm going to give Nashville a penalty. He makes a call. Look, from my perspective, it's a 50-50 call. If he doesn't say this, you're annoyed, but you're not suspicious, because there's bad calls in every match, game, tilt, whatever you want to call, the event you're watching. But he's gone. The NBA and Gary Bettman took NHL, pardon me, and Gary Bettman took no time in dismissing him. Now, granted, the season's coming close to the end, and he was done at the end of the year anyway. But it does bring about some questions. Like, when you hear the clip, the immediate thing I think of, and if you've played sports, you know this is sort of him talking out loud, I think, where he's saying, like, this game's getting out of hand, getting chippy, and it's hockey that still involves fist fighting, still involves brutal checking where you can hit someone with a stick, right? So it's a very physical game. And I think he's just sort of thinking out loud, how I imagine it. And I'm not defending him. I guess we'll hear more if we hear any more audio, where he's trying to say, like, I got to get it under control somehow. Nashville's being the aggressors in a way that's going to lead to a negative result for all the parties involved. Now, having said that, he should know, that you can't say that out loud. You just talk about that in the locker room with your fellow officials, or you just never discuss it and then wink and a nod to the other boys on the ice. Needless to say, he's gone, and it's bizarre. I just wanted to get your take.
Have you ever said anything out loud on accident that you meant to say in your head?
All the time.
Yes. Yeah. So I understand. If that's what happened, I kind of understand it. I'm going to totally out myself. This is really embarrassing. But one time I was on vacation with my family. I think I was in high school, and we did like one of those zip lining excursions where you go and do a bunch of zip lines, and you hike to a zip line and go down it. And the big final zip line was at the end, was the last one, and we were on this thing with a Girl Scout troop. So some young girls, And I got on the zip line and I went first, and it was awesome. Like, it was sweet. And I yelled out, I thought I was saying this to myself, but I was on the zip line going down and I yelled, "This is effing amazing," or something along those lines. And then my dad gets to the bottom of the zip line and there's just rage in his eyes. And I didn't understand what I'd done at this point. My mom gets to the bottom and she's ready to kill me. And I'm like, "What's up? What is wrong with you guys? Wasn't that awesome?" And then they told me, and it was one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. And I just added it out of myself here. So if that's what happened, I get it. I don't know what happened. But yeah, man, you gotta be careful. I mean, referees, unfortunately, because they're human beings, they are held to a higher standard, but they are human beings and they make mistakes. I don't know. I'm going to have to listen to the clip because I haven't heard it. But if it's what you say, then I kind of understand.
Well, and that's sort of how it is, right? I mean, like, look, I guess it really becomes the question of, if you remember back in the day, remember when the Bengals had Perfect and he knocked out Antonio Brown before everyone thought Antonio Brown was super crazy, just kind of crazy? Like, those games were refereed differently than another NFL football game because there's a history between the two franchises. Some of them ended with what we thought could be Antonio Brown's last breath. Like when Perfect hit him in that playoff game or the game before the playoffs, I literally thought I might have saw a human die.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, they're human, but that's also kind of their job, right? If you're an NBA, if you're an umpire in Major League Baseball and you're on the third game of a 3-game set, and the first game people were getting thrown at, the second game they came out of the dugouts but didn't fight. I mean, the third game, you're going to keep it tight. You don't want a brawl breaking out on your watch. That's the last thing you want. So you're going to referee differently. People say that's being a person. Like, I think that's being a human. Like, your job being a referee. I was thinking about it today. It's sort of like being a policeman and a judge, because you got to monitor the day-to-day things. And then you're the one who makes the determination as well. Yeah. So, the minute to minute. And then when you see a teams over and over throughout the season, as they often do, then you're judging it on a bigger sampling than just in the moment. And while that may seem sort of contrarian and not what you would want, it's kind of necessary to ensure that games go off without brawls all the time. Because if we allow, and anyone who I hear a lot of people get angry, although I don't disapprove of it, that, like, when pitchers throw at people and stuff. I mean, I grew up playing baseball. That's kind of part of it. It's the way you police yourself, and people don't like that for various reasons. I just grew up with it, so I thought it was the way the world worked. Unfortunately, the real world doesn't work like that, just the sporting world, or maybe the real world does. Ponder that. But there is a certain amount of responsibility to not let the games get out of control. And so I just imagine him being like, and I'd have to go back and check, like, I remember these guys from December.
Right.
Way too many fights.
Right.
I thought it was out of control. I'm going to nip it in the butt early and call a cheap or a borderline call and let them know, like, keep it in line. That's how I interpreted it.
If we're talking about superstar treatment, that's a different conversation. Like, if we're talking about Ronnie Brewer having a great defensive play on Kobe Bryant, where he doesn't foul him at all, but Kobe still gets the call because he's Kobe Bryant, that's a different conversation. But if we're talking about trying to protect the players and not have violent incidents, then I'm okay with them using a little discretion and saying, I got to get this under control. I'm fine with that. It's not a black and white issue, and it's tough, man. Like, we give, not just you and I, but we sports fans give referees a hard time. And a lot of the times, deservedly so. Like, we've criticized the NFL officiating just as bad as anybody.
Pac-12 officiating.
Pac-12 officiating. NBA.
Can we imagine if we had some open mics there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
We got lawyers in the booth determining whether or not it was a complete pass.
So crazy. It's still so crazy to me, that story. So, we criticize referees, and rightfully so sometimes, but it is a very difficult job. And nobody's like, hey, that guy, he reffed a really good game last night. No one. The only time you're ever talking about the refs is when they screw it up. And so it's a thankless, terrible job, honestly. And I don't know who wants to do it unless you're just getting paid for fixing games like Scott Foster. Allegedly.
Hey, they make some pretty good change. Don't kid yourselves.
I know.
They're well compensated, but it's like, I always try to tell my daughter to thank the official after every game.
Good, man.
Even if you thought they were terrible. But I've made
refs cry before, and I'm not proud of it. It's some of my most shameful moments.
We're really getting into offending Girl Scouts and making referees cry.
Wow.
You're that dude, dog. You are that
I am,
dude,
man. In my younger years, I was a very difficult person. I still am, but at least I can recognize where I'm difficult. Whereas it was a girls' lacrosse game, and I made a ref cry, and it was really sad, and I feel really bad about it. Man, maybe I do deserve to be in last place in March Madness. Maybe this is my karma coming back to me.
Oh, man. I hadn't heard the girls lacrosse since that's such an epic and important event in life, but it was in that moment. I understand. I've never made them cry, but I've been kicked out of a lot of CYO games, so I'm not far behind you. I've had them stop and be like, time for you to leave. And I'm like, me? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
It was him. And they're like, no, it's you.
Nice try, buddy. Nice try.
I've had that. They never cried, but they definitely asked me to leave the gym. So I get where you're coming from. And I'd like to think that we've matured quite a bit.
I think
we're
so.
defending referees now.
I never thought it would happen. Never thought there'd come a day where I would stand here and defend a referee. But here we are. Tim
Peel, we have your back.
Yeah. I want to listen to that clip, though, because I want to get a little bit more context and what was going on. But it's pretty easy to say, hey, you're done, when he was going to be done anyway in like a month or whatever it is. Pretty easy to do that.
Well, but then he has the flip side. If it gets out of control, everyone says, well, where was the referee?
Right. Exactly. You can't win. You can't win, man.
Hard knock life wearing the stripes, man. It's a hard knock life being a zebra.
Yeah, that's going to do it. It should be a mellow week for the Jazz. Let's hope so. Let's hope there are no surprises. And then they'll get into some tough games next week, which we'll definitely be previewing, talking about Dame Lillard, man. That's always a tough one. Phoenix Suns, they're rising. So we'll get you ready for that next week. We'll get you ready for the finale of the tournament. Lots of fun stuff coming up. We want to know what you think of the show. We want to know what you think of the Jazz, how they're playing. What about Rudy Gobert? Should he be considered an MVP candidate? Hit us up. Let us know what you think on the voicemail and text line. Also, send us an email, dogandeuce@gmail.com. I am Dog.
And I'm Deuce.
And we will talk to you next week.
Enjoy the madness.